The afternoon sun poured its heat onto a restless city street, where people hurried past one another, too busy to notice the silent cries around them. On that corner, where the shadows of tall buildings stretched across cracked pavement, a small boy, no older than 9, sat huddled against a cold brick wall. His frame was frail, his ribs visible beneath the thin fabric of his shirt, and his trembling hands clutched an empty paper cup, as though it were the last thing tethering him to hope. Dozens passed him by. Men in suits, women with shopping bags, students with earbuds in. But none stopped. A few glanced his way with fleeting sympathy, but none dared act on it. To the world, he was unseen, another forgotten child swallowed by the city's indifference. Yet, for one woman, that moment would change everything. Not only for the boy but for herself too. Before we continue, friends, if you believe in kindness, compassion, and the power of second chances, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Limitless Truth. Together, we can keep spreading these reminders of humanity's hidden goodness. Stories the world so deeply needs. Her name was Margaret Hale. A woman in her late 40s, carrying both the strength and the scars of a life that hadn't been gentle. Years ago, tragedy had stolen her husband, leaving her to raise 2 children alone. Each day was a struggle, 2 jobs, sleepless nights, and the constant fear of not making rent. Yet, through all of it, her heart never hardened. She knew too well what it meant to be unseen. So, when she noticed that small boy, his head bowed low, his spirit all but broken, she couldn't turn away. Kneeling beside him, Margaret saw his cracked lips, dirt-streaked cheeks, and clothes torn beyond repair. His shoes barely clung to his feet. In a voice fragile as wind, he whispered his name, Elias. He hadn't eaten in days. His mother had vanished months before. His father had succumbed to addiction and never returned. For weeks, he had survived on scraps, sleeping behind dumpsters and alleyways. Most would have passed him without a second thought. But not Margaret. Without hesitation, she reached out, took his trembling hand, and led him away from that cold corner toward something new. Something human. The days that followed were not easy. Taking Elias in meant another mouth to feed, more bills, and endless judgment from neighbors who couldn't understand why she would burden herself with a stranger. But Margaret paid them no mind. She gave him her son's old clothes, cooked warm meals, and stayed beside him on nights when nightmares tore through his fragile sleep. Slowly, the boy who had once spoken only in whispers began to laugh again. Elias discovered a love for books. Margaret, though exhausted from work, would bring home old second-hand novels from thrift shops, encouraging him to dream beyond the walls of their tiny apartment. She enrolled him in school, where he struggled at first but soon began to shine. Teachers saw his curiosity, his hunger to learn, and his quiet brilliance. Years passed. Life remained difficult, but Elias thrived under Margaret's care. He helped her with groceries, fixed broken furniture, and studied long after midnight. Scholarships followed. Doors once sealed began to open. The day he received his university acceptance letter, Margaret wept tears of pride. As he prepared to leave, she hugged him tightly and whispered, "Make something of your life, Elias. Not for the world's applause, but for yourself, and for the boy you once were." A college was a battlefield. Long nights, endless failures, and moments of crushing doubt. But through every obstacle, Elias carried Margaret's faith like a torch. He immersed himself in technology and innovation, experimenting with ideas others deemed impossible. There were setbacks, collapsed ventures, and sleepless nights, yet he never gave in to despair. Because he remembered the woman who had chosen kindness over comfort. By his late 20s, Elias had built a company rooted in purpose, creating sustainable technologies that improved lives. Investors laughed at first, but soon his vision turned into reality. Success followed. His name appeared in newspapers, his speeches inspired millions. The boy once ignored on a sidewalk became a billionaire entrepreneur admired across the globe. But wealth could not erase the memory of the woman who had saved him. Years later, luxury cars rolled to a stop on that same old street. Curious onlookers gathered as cameras clicked. From one of the cars stepped Elias, now a man in his early 30s, dressed in a sharp suit, confidence in his stride but emotion in his eyes. The world knew him as a business giant. But he was there not for fame. He was there for her. Margaret, now older, her hair silvered and hands frail, looked up in confusion as he approached. She didn't recognize him, until he knelt before her, tears falling freely. The street grew silent. Even strangers held their breath as the billionaire pressed her hand to his forehead. He told her that everything, every success, every ounce of achievement, belonged to her. She had seen him when the world refused to look. She had given him life when he had nothing left. That day, Elias changed Margaret's world. He moved her into a beautiful home, made sure she would never work another day, and built a foundation in her name. A sanctuary for homeless and abandoned children, offering them shelter, food, and education. The same gift she had once given him. News outlets praised the story. Headlines celebrated his humility. But to Elias, none of that mattered. The real victory was watching the woman who had saved him finally live in peace. Years later, when journalists asked what fueled his success, Elias never spoke first about business or technology. Instead, he said, "Once, I was a hungry boy sitting alone on a sidewalk. A woman stopped when no one else would, and she saved me. Everything I do now is to honor that act of kindness." Friends, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Limitless Truth. Because your support helps us keep sharing the stories that remind the world that kindness still exists. And before you go, tell us in the comments, if you had the power to change one life with a single act of compassion, what would you do? The story of Margaret and Elias reminds us that one moment, one selfless choice, can echo across time. Sometimes, a single meal given to a starving child can grow into a legacy that changes the world.